Member of that committee, Senator Tom Udall of New Mexico. Senator, it's good to have you with us this morning. I want to ask about some of your specific pointed questions about President Trump's tax returns. Sure. But first, just more broadly, the idea yesterday was to get some answers from the Secretary of State about what happened in what was effectively a private meeting between President Trump and President Putin with only translators in the room. Did you get any closer yesterday after 3 hours to understanding what happened or what was agreed to in that meeting?
No, I didn't at all, and that's the really disturbing thing. You know, what we end up having here is a president who's a walking conflict of interest. I mean, he has business interests around the world. He's been wanting to set up a tower, a Trump Tower there in Russia for, I think, 30 years. He's tweeted out about that. His sons have actually said, one of his sons made the specific comment that the Russians are disproportionately represented in the deals that they do. And so I just wanted to know, and I think the American people want to know, is he working for the American people or is he working for himself? And what kind of discussion is he having with President Trump? What is he having with Putin there in that discussion when the two of them are meeting together? So I'm just, I think everyone's mystified as to what went on. We were trying to get to the bottom of it, and we really didn't. It's very discouraging to see that the Secretary couldn't answer our questions about what went on in that discussion for over 2 hours, where there isn't a readout, there isn't a formal presentation, people understanding what were the exchanges that were made and what were the agreements were made. That's the really crucial thing.
Did you conclude, Senator, that Secretary Pompeo was not willing to share what he knew about that meeting, or the alternative being that he doesn't know what happened in that room?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think he told us what he was assigned to do, but then when you start asking him specific questions, when they got tricky and they got tough in terms of the questions, he would just avoid them. So it's very hard to tell. I mean, he's really got the boss from hell. This guy, I think, was our CIA director. He's trying to do a good job. He's trying to represent us, but he's got a president who's really unbalanced and doesn't really focus on what he should be doing in those meetings.
Senator Udall, Casey Hunt, it's good to see you. Based on your comments just now about the Secretary of State, is there anyone in the president's cabinet who you do trust with our national security decisions? And do you think any of those people, if they exist, are in the room with the president?
Well, I like the fact that Secretary Mattis, Casey, is still in charge over there at the Defense Department. I think he's a very calming figure. I think he's widely respected in the Department of Defense by all the armed forces. And I listen to him. When he comes up to defense appropriations and we hear from him, he is...
Do you think the president is still listening to General Mattis?
Yes, I do. And I've seen several times where he seems to be accompanying him to meetings and they're having good discussions. I fear that he's isolated, because when you have Bolton and Pompeo and that kind of triumvirate there in the White House, I really worry that they're overwhelming Mattis, and that Mattis doesn't have as much say anymore with these big changes that have been made in his team there in the White House.
Senator Mark McKinnon here. You raised the question about the president's taxes, and as you know, as we all do, he has claimed that they're being audited, and that's been going on for an awful long time. But that seems like a sort of fundamental that we ought to know about at least our presidents and elected representatives. Do you see that as is there legislation that you would support or that's underway that will require future presidents to disclose?
I think we should do that. I think it's very important that people know if there are conflicts of interest that the president might have, that we clear that up. And the easy thing here is just disclose all the tax returns. You know, back to Richard Nixon in the 1970s, ever since then, presidents have disclosed their tax returns. Jimmy Carter, in fact, sold his peanut business off because he was worried about conflicts of interest. So we have got to have transparency here. We got to have accountability, and we're not getting it from this president.
Senator Susan Del Percio here. Just switching gears a little bit, can you tell us how these trade wars are affecting your state and your neighboring states?
Yeah. Well, the most difficult thing is that farmers, ranchers, people that always relied on expanding markets are now seeing those markets cave in on them. And so this is a very, very difficult situation for New Mexico as a border state and as an export state for some of these farm products. The other thing that's happening that I think is a serious problem is we have businesses that export. There's a business in specific, I'm talking about steel coil, and they did that business to export to Mexico. And now with the uncertainty in NAFTA and with the things that are happening, they feel really threatened. They feel uncertain. They're not going to invest as much money. I mean, I'm just very worried that our economic expansion we're seeing is going to start